I think that's exactly what he is. He's a change of scenery guy. I think that's a great description. He needs a change of scenery. The Eagles need to move on. I mean, that would be the best case scenario. And you mentioned the cap and ramifications. Yeah, those are true as well. You know, it costs less to keep them than to cut them and all that. Um, but the Eagles have proven, you know, with Carson Wentz, they changed the game. All right, and they're willing to move on from a player. They don't care. It it's more about the first round pick aspect of it. They don't, and I talk about it all the time. They're not the only team. The teams don't want to give up on first round picks. They think it looks bad. Um, but change of scenery would be good for the Eagles, and it would be great for Jalen Reagor.
You got Jody McDonald and John McMullen, your Mac and Mac 365 guys here. Dave Weinberg from 97.3 ESPN down the shore, going to hop aboard with us coming up in less than 20 minutes from now. John, I do want to ask you a couple more wide receiver questions because as of right now, the Eagles do have a lot of wide receivers on their roster, and they're not going to be able to keep them all. How many are going to go to the practice squad? Who is or isn't going to be here? Jalen Reagor kind of sticks out like a sore thumb because he doesn't have a role now on this team. We're only 2 years removed from him being a first round draft pick. His contribution to the team in his first 2 years has been underwhelming, underachieving. Use whatever descriptive adjective you want to attach to it. But the addition of A.J. Brown really does push him further down the depth chart and further down the options for the Eagles offense. A lot of people thought that the Eagles may attempt to trade him during this offseason. I'm sure they did, but weren't able to do a deal. What does Rager's life look like as soon as they show up for camp? How is he going to be used? Will he continue to be shopped? Do the coach and general manager continue to look at what he does or doesn't bring to the table, either on the field or in trade? What's camp going to be like for Jalen Reagor?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be fun for him because he's going to be behind, obviously, clearly, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, and Zach Pascal. So, as a former first round pick, I think that's going to be something probably a little bit difficult um, to handle. But he does have a path to the roster until they can get him off the roster. And I think they will be trying to do that pretty consistently um, leading up to week one and the cut down. And that's what we talked about with Ed, and that's the returner positions. And he wasn't good at it last year, but he did show the explosion on occasion. He had one long punt return, he had one long kickoff return. So you see the athleticism. What you don't see as a punt returner is ball security. He's not comfortable still securing the ball, and that's the most important part. Um, Coaches will tell you, and special teams coaches especially. And then it's great to have some explosion from there. Kick returner, just you got to hit the hole. You got to go, and there's too much sort of east west instead of north south. And I talk about Jalen all the time. He doesn't seem to play with confidence. It's kind of bizarre. We see it in Philadelphia, saw it in a higher profile level with the basketball team. We consistently saw it. It's kind of amazing when high level athletes lose their confidence, but they do it. Happens all the time, Jody. You've been around a long time. Go to baseball, the yips, certain players, Steve Sachs back in the day, and players like that who can't throw the ball from second base to first base. They've been doing it their whole life. And all of a sudden they wake up one day, they can't do it. Um, it, who knows? But right now, the Jalen Reagor, who is playing for the Eagles or was playing at the end of last season, didn't have a lot of confidence. And the fact that the Eagles have essentially moved on from him as a receiver. I mean, barring injuries, we always say that, right? But you got to throw that in there. He's not going to be playing a lot of snaps at receiver. Until they can move on from him, they need a returner. So that to me would be the one spot that he could fit in.
And we had Brad Spielberger on yesterday, our cap expert. You mentioned just move on from Jalen Reagor. Easier said than done. When you're talking about a first round draft pick and the way the contracts work for first round draft picks, if they would have cut him at this stage with 2 more years this year and next to go in the contract, they'd take a dead cap hit. They can't just move on from Jalen Reagor. No, they're going to lose cap space if they move Jalen Reagor, a little less so in a trade than a flat out cut. But if you're going to be negatively affected by cutting a guy from your roster, it's not like, well, we'll cut him, we'll bring in somebody else, or we'll give Kobe more of a chance, or maybe that John Hightower finally comes to. No, you got to still pay Jalen Reagor the money that is owed to Jalen Reagor because he got as big a signing bonus as he did when he was first drafted. That's the way the contracts work for first rounders in the NFL. That's why they're kind of stuck with him, John. So that's why I asked the question I ask. Is there any role? Punt, kickoff. We know the forced receptions hasn't really worked. Some teams have a handful of those in their play, short passes, bubble screens, and the like. That's what I think the Eagles foresaw when they drafted him, that he was going to be a master of that, and that's going to be a big element and a key play in their playbook. It hasn't been. So what exactly does Rhaegar do? Even if they could work out a trade, somebody give him a 7th round draft pick for him, do you think he's a change of scenery guy? Because you get those every once in a while. I just get the new lease on life with a new organization. Can you see Jalen Reagor doing something like that?
I think that's exactly what he is. He's a change of scenery guy. I think that's a great description. He needs a change of scenery. The Eagles need to move on. I mean, that would be the best case scenario. And you mentioned the cap and ramifications. Yeah, those are true as well. You know, it costs less to keep them than to cut them and all that. But the Eagles have proven, you know, with Carson Wentz, they changed the game. All right, and they're willing to move on from a player. They don't care. It's more about the first round pick aspect of it. They don't, and I talk about it all the time. They're not the only team. The teams don't want to give up on first round picks. They think it looks bad. But change of scenery would be good for the Eagles, and it would be great for Jalen Reagor. Great for Jalen Reagor. And I don't know if he can turn it around, but if he does, because he does have talent, and if he does and fans get upset about it, don't get upset about it, because it wasn't going to happen here. And change of scenery means change of scenery. It means he needs a change of scenery. It's not going to happen for him here. And that small path he has is as a returner. And who knows if he gains some confidence as a returner and he starts to have some success, which is hard to do in the modern NFL, to be honest, Jody, because you don't get many opportunities. But if that were to happen, and he starts to get his confidence back and somebody gets hurt and he gets some reps at receiver, yeah, all right. I guess there's a, you know, if we want to put odds on it, a 10% chance, but I wouldn't go much higher than that. Change of scenery means change of scenery. And same thing with Ben Simmons. If Ben Simmons turns into a superstar wherever, Brooklyn, he wants to go to Los Angeles, wherever, it wasn't going to happen here. Right. So those people circling back and saying, "Oh, you turned it." No, wasn't going to happen. Same thing with Jalen Reagor.
I think that's a fair way to look at it, and a lot of time fans don't. What'd he do when he went elsewhere? We could have held on to him. No, it does not work that way. If you have long enough to judge a guy in a specific spot and you just don't believe it's going to happen, well, then, yeah, you got to do what you got to do to move on. And we'll see if Jalen Reagor ever does move on. I don't think he's a bad dude. I don't think he's a bad kid.
Good
so I'd kind of root for him to have some success elsewhere, even if it does look bad for the Eagles. And you're right about that first round draft pick thing. And it's everyone in the league handles it in different ways, but they're all pretty damn similar. I do believe the Eagles are a little bit more sensitive than other organizations. And he's got a lot of love and a lot of play here of late. I think it's one of Howie Roseman's warts. He knows that he is overly judged by his first round draft picks that haven't worked out. And he is very sensitive when it comes to those first round draft picks because rest of the draft, good, free agency, good, cap management, good, roster construction, good. How he gets passing grades in almost every aspect of being developing other executives that other teams want and hire away, good. I can go down a list of things that Howie Roseman does real well. One that he's come up short in is the effectiveness and the success of his first round draft picks. And if I know it, and McMullen knows it, then Howie Roseman knows it too. And I think from time to time, he does go a little further, bend a little further backwards to try and get for Andre Dillard's still here. I'm not sure you agree with me, but I'll tell you, that's as big a reason why he's here as anything else. He's still a first-round draft pick that Howie Roseman doesn't part with because he fears he could go out somewhere else and look good.
Well, I think Andre has more value than Joe. I think it's legitimate to keep Andre Dillard, even though you'd like to trade him because he's not going to be a starter here, and you don't want to pay a backup what Andre makes. But he does have value. I'm not sure. And when I say value, I'm talking, I'm not talking crazy, but at worst a fourth round pick. I'm not sure Jalen has that value. So I think it's a little bit different.
So you say at worst a fourth round pick. I say at best a fourth round pick.
You and Andre can play. Andre's a starting left tackle in this league. I'm not saying, there's 32 starting left tackles. He's a starting left tackle. He's one of the best 30. He might be 22, 23, 24. He might be down the list, but he's a starting left tackle in this league. There's a lot of bad offensive linemen in this league. And so, but there's some value in Andre Dillard.
If you're one of those 10 teams that you're suggesting are starting a lesser left tackle than Andre Dillard, and the Eagles would at least be open to talking about potentially trading Andre Dillard, why aren't those teams calling the Eagles?
Oh, I'm sure they have. You know how teams are this time of year. I talk about it all the time. When the Eagles were talking all the nonsense about the corners, the young corners, that's how everybody is. You have an obvious hole, and you start saying, well, in the case of the Eagles, I give them credit for, they're just paying the lip service, and, Bradbury became available. I didn't think they were going to go down that route, and they went down that route, and they were able to get him. Last year is probably a better example with Steve Nelson and the fact that they were talking about Zach McPherson the whole offseason. And then magically Steve Nelson shows up 2 days before the start of camp. He's inserted right away, never leaves the lineup. It happens all the time. I've seen it with other teams, covering other teams. They say, we're pretty excited. And there's two ways. There's obvious holes, and then there's draft picks. And, as you get down to third or fourth round picks, and they say, we're excited about this guy. We're excited. And then they get him on the field for some grass time, as we were talking about, Jody, and they go, oh crap. That's basically, they go, oh crap. And we got to do something. This kid's not ready to play. You go all the way back to the Super Bowl season. That's kind of what happened with the Eagles at corner. And all of a sudden they're in August, and they got to give a second round pick of Jordan Matthews for Ronald Darby, which is pretty stinking expensive. Jordan was a volume receiver, I'll call him. Had a lot of receptions, was starting to turn in. Then he had some knee problems, and you're giving up a pretty significant pick for Ronald Darby, who, it's a good corner, still get paid like a good corner at least. But that was pretty expensive at the time. And you see yourself in these desperate straits, and happens all the time with Irv Smith got hurt. I always use him as an example last year because with your Jets, the Vikings traded for Chris Herndon. Didn't even play. I mean, didn't even get. People get desperate, and that's what the Eagles are waiting for with Andre Dillard.
We'll see if there is someone that gets desperate enough. Yeah, you just have a higher opinion of the player than I do. I think he has not been a Rhaegar-like disappointment, but a disappointment just the same. Because as John liked telling us, when Birds 365 was in its infancy and we were just starting to do shows here, and McMahon was running off the camp every single day, Andre Dillard getting the snaps first. Andre Dillard being run out there first. Andre Dillard had the chance to be the starting left tackle of the Philadelphia Eagles this year. He was so overwhelmed by Jordan Mailata and looked so bad in comparison to Jordan Mailata. I think a lot of it had to do with Mailata was better than we thought he was going to be.
Yeah.
And man, did he.
Well, that's the big part of it, Jody. We didn't know, and I don't care what anybody says. Well, Baldy will argue this, and our buddy Ross Tucker as well, but nobody knew Jordan Mailata was going to be a top 5 left tackle. I mean, he lost out to a top 5 left tackle. He didn't lose out to the 32nd best left tackle. So I think that weighs into
how many practices did it take before that was blatantly
obvious? A lot. Blatantly obvious. No, not a lot. I thought you were going to ask how many practices before the Eagles made the decision. They didn't make the decision until till Andre got hurt, which I think were the joint practices with the Jets, which was late in the process. Now, you said when it was obvious. Yeah, it was obvious about a weekend.
Yeah, more like an hour to it, but that's just me. You were there, I wasn't. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We are Birds 365. All right, we've got another big-necked guy joining the show. David Weinberg's going to join us from down the shore here on Birds 365.